Okay, that's a wonderful introduction. Thank you very much. And I'd like to welcome you to the Freedom Convention 2020. And and to this panel, which is on women rights in Turkey. I'd like to thank Advocates of Silence Turkey for putting this on, and especially, you can't believe how much work my beautiful Hafsa Girdap did to put all of this on. She's our organizer, so thank you so much, Hafsa. Today we're going to have 5 speakers, including myself, and I'll introduce each one before their talk, and they have about between 15 and 17 minutes to speak total. And we'll do the Q&A at the end of the talk. I'd like to introduce first attorney Erin Keskin. She's from Sivas and she's been a lawyer since 1984. She's been in the human rights movement since 1989. She served as Istanbul branch president and vice president of the Human Rights Association, IHD, and currently serves as the IHD co-chairwoman. Erin Keskin is also the founder of an office that advocates for women and transgender women free of charge who have been subjected to sexual torture by state forces since 1997. Attorney Keskin has been subjected to many pressures for years from opposing political power and militaristic practices. And now we turn to Attorney Keskin's talk, and it will be translated by our translator Murat Saymaz.
Okay. Merhaba herkese. Bugün beklemediğim bir şeyle karşılaştım. Hastayım biraz. O nedenle biraz daha kısa konuşacağım ama bu görüşmenin, bu toplantının çok önemli olduğunu düşünüyorum. Çünkü coğrafyamızda kadınlar büyük hak ihlallerine maruz kalıyorlar.
I just want to say hello to everyone, and today I just want to mention that today I have something unexpected developed. I've gotten sick, so I'm going to be short in my speech. And this, meeting and conference and symposium, I must say, is very important to me. I'm going to talk about the injustices in our geography.
Yaşadığımız coğrafya bir soykırım coğrafyası. Yani yüzyılın ilk ve en büyük suçunun işlendiği bir coğrafya. 1915 Ermeni soykırımı, ardından 1938 Dersim soykırımı ve bütün bu soykırım uygulamalarında en büyük mağduriyeti kadınlar yaşamışlar. O nedenle kadına yönelik şiddet açısından bu coğrafya kadın mezarlarıyla dolu bir coğrafya. En başta bunu söylemek istiyorum.
So I want to first and foremost mention that the geography that I'm located and we live in right now is the geography of, I would say, genocides, for especially within the last 100 years, and started with the 1915 Armenian genocide and continued with 1938 Dersim genocide. So these are the major crimes committed against Armenians and the Christians and all the others, and a lot of people killed and raped during this period, during this genocide. And I might also add that this geography has a lot of graves filled with women.
Coğrafyamızda yerleşik bir resmi ideoloji var. Bu resmi ideoloji sadece Türk ve Sünni Müslüman kimliğini temel alan bir resmi ideoloji. Son derece erkek egemen, feodal ve militer bir resmi ideoloji.
So, this geography we have has a very, I would say, stern, but also formal governmental ideology, and this ideology mainly protects and for Turkish people and also Turkish nationalists and also for Sunnis, and it's dominated by men. It's a feudalistic and militaristic ideology.
Ve ne yazık ki yerleşik hukuk sistemi de buna göre örgütlenmiş. Yani yazılı hukuk sistemi genel olarak kadınların yok sayıldığı bir hukuk sistemi.
So the system we have for the judicial system, I might say actually, and it is very dense, and it is dense violence against women and against all the facts of violence against women was not even had in the chapter of the section of the criminal code. So, and it is as a result of this, women are most significant victims of this regime we have here.
2005 yılına kadar yaşadığımız coğrafyada, Türkiye'de kadına yönelik şiddeti düzenleyen Türk Ceza Kanunu'nda bir bölüm başlığı bile yoktu. Kadına yönelik şiddet Türk Ceza Kanunu'nda genel ahlak ve aileye karşı suçlar olarak düzenleniyordu.
So, up until, 2005, there was not even a criminal code in the Turkish law that was titled Violence Against Women. So the heading of the chapter contains provisions about the violence against women was crimes against family. It was only called crimes against family and general moral. So in other words, women only a component of family and morale, and that was it.
Örneğin tecavüz suçunun tanımı son derece yetersizdi. Cinsel taciz diye bir suç tanımı dahi yoktu. Bunun yanında son derece önemli olan bir cinayetin, bir kadın cinayetinin namus nedeniyle işlenmesi indirim sebebi sayılıyordu Türk Ceza Kanunu'nda 2005 yılına kadar.
So up until 2005, the law was amended as a result of women's struggle, and the European Union went blowing at the time, so the violence against women was included under the law. But up until then, there was not even a definition of rape in the Turkish Criminal Code, and there was no definition of sexual harassment.
2005 yılında pardon.
Okay, and if interesting part is, for example, if a crime was an honor killing, this was automatic deduction reason. In other words, state was the instigator of the honor killings.
2005 yılında kadınların mücadeleleri ve o dönem Avrupa Birliği rüzgarları nedeniyle Türk Ceza Kanunu'nda değişiklikler yapıldı. Örneğin cinsel saldırı suçu bir tanım olarak Türk Ceza Kanunu'na girdi. Cinsel taciz bir suç olarak tanımlandı. Ve bir cinayetin namus nedeniyle işlenmesi indirim sebebi olmaktan çıkarıldı. Bunlar önemli gelişmelerdi.
The significant changes came when, the wins, I would say the joining to European Union, had much effect of the changes in the Turkish Criminal Code, and where they had the definition of sexual crimes against women, sexual harassments was included in the Turkish Criminal Code.
Ve 2011 yılında Türkiye Cumhuriyeti Devleti Avrupa Konseyi İstanbul Sözleşmesi'ni imzaladı. İstanbul Sözleşmesi kadına yönelik şiddet alanında son derece önemli bir sözleşme. Çünkü genel ahlak, normlar, ahlak anlayışının gerek metin altına alan bir sözleşme. Türkiye bunu imzaladı.
I think most significant part of there was this very significant agreement has been signed, which is called the Council of Europe Istanbul Convention. Actually, this convention is most significant agreement for the violence against women and sexual distinctive social perspective. Sexually distinctive social perspective. I think the most important part of the Istanbul Convention is the provision stating that customs, traditions, and perspective on honor cannot be considered as a reason for violence. Although this convention was undersigned by Turkish Republic in 2011, the provisions of the agreement are applied neither in practical life or before the courts.
Ancak Türkiye Cumhuriyeti Devleti maalesef ki bir hukuk devleti değil. Yani kendi iç hukuku, yazılı hukuku ve anayasayla iç hukukunun da üzerinde kabul ettiği uluslararası sözleşmeleri uygulamıyor. İmza atıyor ancak pratikte bunları uygulamıyor. En büyük sorunumuz bu bizim.
The biggest problem I would say was, as I just stated, because I don't believe the Turkish Republic currently is not the rule of law does not exist. Although they might have signed into the law, but in practicality, they do not exist in front of the courts or before the courts.
Ben 1997 yılından bu yana devlet güçleri tarafından, yani polisler, askerler, korucular ya da başka, yani devlet güçleri tarafından cinsel işkenceye uğrayan kadınlara ücretsiz avukatlık yapan bir hukuk bürosunun kurucusuyum.
So I have established a law office since in 1997. Ever since then, I've been representing for free of charge women who have been victim of law enforcement, whether if it's police, whether if it's the military, for those women who have been sexually assaulted and tortured.
Bugüne kadar bize 758 kadın ve trans kadın başvurdu. Bunlar gerçek sayıyı yansıtmıyor. Çünkü kadınlar yaşadıkları cinsel şiddet ya da cinsel işkence nedeniyle utanıyorlar, korkuyorlar, kirlenmişlik hissediyorlar ve açıklamıyorlar. Bunlar sadece açıklayan kadınların sayısı.
So far, there's been 758 women and trans women, have sought help from us. But unfortunately, these are not the true numbers. Unfortunately, a lot of them are, ashamed. A lot of them are in fear. A lot of them feels if they were to come out there, they'll be considered as dirty.
Ve yaşadığımız coğrafyada eğer fail devlet güçlerinden biri ise büyük bir cezasızlık söz konusu. Biz 1997 yılından beri çalışıyoruz. Bugüne kadar cezalandırılan 2 korucu dışında tek bir ceza alan devlet görevlisi olmadı. Büyük bir cezasızlık söz konusu.
So, the issue is, the failure is when this person who's committing these horrendous crimes are a member of a government. They pretty much let go free. Since 1997, there has been only 2 government security personnel, only 2 had received a punishment, and the rest of them had let been go.
Maalesef ki coğrafyamızda yerleşik resmi ideoloji o kadar belirleyici ve o kadar tahakküm yaratan bir resmi ideoloji ki bütün insanları kendisine inandırıyor.
So unfortunately, this distinctive and also oppressive ideology by the government unfortunately is ruling this country and also the criminal law.
Şu anda Türkiye Cumhuriyeti Devleti kendi iç hukuku da dahil altına imza attı. Hiçbir uluslararası sözleşmeye uygun davranmıyor.
Unfortunately, the Turkish government are not abiding with their own laws, including those laws signed international laws. They're not abiding with any of those laws that they signed.
Örneğin kadına yönelik şiddet konusunda biraz önce de söylediğim gibi son derece önemli bir sözleşme. Avrupa Konseyi İstanbul Sözleşmesi. Bu sözleşme uygulansa eğer kadına yönelik şiddet alanında çok fazla yol alınabilir. Ama Türkiye Cumhuriyeti Devleti özellikle yargı alanında bu sözleşmeyi uygulamıyor. Hiçbir hakim ve savcı bu sözleşme sanki yok gibi davranıyor. Ve maalesef ki Türkiye bu anlamda yeterince de denetlenmiyor.
So unfortunately, as I mentioned, this convention and the international agreements, they're not following. Especially if they were to follow this, the Istanbul Convention, the Council of Europe Convention, if they were to follow, there'll be significant changes. But unfortunately, neither the law or the judges or the prosecutors, all of them acting as if these laws does not exist. And unfortunately, Turkey has not been investigated enough.
Biz kadına yönelik şiddet politiktir diyoruz. Neden politiktir? Devlet dili sertleştiği oranda, çünkü devlet dili çok erkek bir dil. Örnek vermek istiyorum. Bugün Türkiye Cumhuriyeti Devleti'nin İçişleri Bakanı olan Süleyman Soylu şöyle bir açıklamayı yapabiliyor. Diyor ki, ben diyor yakalarsanız lime lime edin talimatını verdim. Bu açıkça işkence yapın talimatını verdim demektir. Bunu söyleyen bir İçişleri Bakanı'nın olduğu bir coğrafyada kadına yönelik şiddetin artması doğru orantılıdır.
So I think this crime against women is politically, it's been driven politically, crime against women. So let me give an example of Ministry of Internal Affairs. Head of this department, the minister himself, his name is Süleyman Soylu, has stated, and this is run by a government, and government words and actions are male dominant. His words are, I gave the directions, I gave orders. If they were to be caught, I want them to put in pieces. So he's pretty much admitting that he's ordering to torture.
Bugün cezaevlerinde kalan çok sayıda kadın mahpus var. Solcu kadınlar var, Kürt kadınlar var, cemaat mensubu olduğu iddia edilen kadınlar var. Çok sayıda kadın var ve çok sayıda hasta kadın var. Ve resmi bilirkişi kurumu olan, yani bir devlet kurumu olan adli tıbbın raporlarıyla hastalıkları belgelenmeyen birçok kadın şu anda cezaevinde ve hak gaspına uğruyorlar.
I'd like to break in and say you have 1 minute left.
Okay, so there are a lot of women in Turkish prisons, and these women are in prison because they have they're leftists, because they are Kurdish, or allegedly that they are members of a Gulen movement, and quite a bit of them had been sick, ill. And there is not much has been done by the government medical examiner's office.
Bugün İnsan Hakları Günü, yani evrensel bildirgenin kabul edildiği günde bu toplantıyı yapıyoruz. Ve maalesef bizim yaşadığımız coğrafyada evrensel bildirgenin hiçbir maddesi uygulanmıyor.
We are in the week, Human Rights Week, and unfortunately, none of the universal human rights, ruling or understanding is not applied.
Ben biraz da uluslararası denetim mekanizmalarına değinmek istiyorum. Şimdi kadına yönelik şiddet alanında en ileri sözleşme olan Avrupa Konseyi İstanbul Sözleşmesi ve bu sözleşmenin denetim mekanizması Grevio. Grevio'nun Türkiye'yi eleştiren raporu yayınlandı. Ama buna rağmen Avrupa Konseyi sessiz kalıyor. Bu sözleşmenin coğrafyamızda uygulanmasındaki eksiklikler konusunda maalesef eksik kalıyor. Bunu da eleştiriyorum.
You know, I want to criticize the international community. You know, although we have signed into Council of Europe Istanbul Convention, if they were to only exercise this convention and conventional rights, there is this institution we're supposed to inspect. It's called GREVO. This is a European institution, and it's supposed to be inspection mechanism, a control mechanism, and it's failing big time. And I, you know, criticize that.
Okay, Attorney Keskin, the time is up, so we have to turn now to Vanya Womack. Would you like to make one last comment, Attorney Keskin?
Son bir yorum da alabilirsek daha sonra soru cevaplara ileride geçeceğiz. Orada devam edebileceğiz. Ondan sonra da Vanya Hanım'a söz vereceğiz.
Ben şunu söylemek istiyorum. Ben bugün hastayım ve çok zor katıldım bu programa. Şunu söylemek istiyorum ben son olarak. Devletler arasındaki ilişkileri maalesef çıkar ilişkileri belirliyor. Ve bütün dünyada son derece erkek egemen bir sistem maalesef söz konusu. Bu nedenle uluslararası düzeyde kadınların dayanışmaya çok fazla ihtiyacı var. Bu dayanışmanın gerçekleştirilmesi için hepimize çok görev düşüyor. Ben çok özür dileyerek, çünkü hakikaten hastayım ve ayrılmak istiyorum. Herkese çok sevgi ve saygılarımı sunuyorum.
I also want to mention that, you know, this has to do with a lot of what the governments that we live in. The governments, you know, they do not inspect each other, or you know, they are in solidarity. They're not in the business of criticizing each other. Unfortunately, these are very male dominant. What I want to say is actually we as the women, we have to be more in solidarity. And I want to apologize from everyone. I've been ill, I've been sick, and I had a difficult time even making the decision and joining this meeting. And I want to apologize for that.
Okay, thank you very much. We now turn to Vanya Womack, and I'd like to read you her bio. She's the Executive Director of Refugees Unknown Stories Untold, also known as RUSU, and a human rights activist. She's an international presenter and keynote speaker and a committed advocate for women and children and those who have experienced trauma as refugees. Vanya is an active contributor to public service messaging that supports human rights. She is a published author in academic research journals with a recent book chapter, Trauma of Turkish Women and Children in an Era of Political Unrest, in a new book titled Human Rights in Turkey, Assaults on Human Dignity, available on Amazon, published by Springer Publications. Previously, she was the director of the Center for Global Learning and a business professor at Cabrini University. We now turn to Vanya. Go ahead. Vanya, you're muted.
There we go. Thank you very much. I'm going to pull up some slides here in just a second. Sorry about this. Hold on here a second. Here we go. All right. Can you see those, Sophia? No?
I don't see your slides yet, but you are able to share screen.
All right. Hold on just a second. Sorry. Not sure what's happening.
Vanya, if you could send me the file, I could help you share the screen.
Yeah, why don't I do that? Sorry about this.
It's not a problem. I could help with, sharing the screen.
Okay.
I'm a housekeeper.
Should we skip to another speaker while she's, that might make sense,
Sorry
right?
about that. We'll see if we can figure this
That's
out.
okay. I'd like to now go to to Natalie. Let me just find her bio here. Actually, I'm going to skip to Hilal Akdeniz. Okay, Hilal? All right. So Hilal Akdeniz is a sociologist who lives in Germany. Her grandfather came as a migrant guest worker to Germany in the early 1970s. She studied sociology in different universities in Germany and Switzerland, and her research topics include flight, migration, identity, and gender. She works at the Foundation for Dialogue and Education in Berlin, and for her PhD, she's currently researching human rights violations during arrests and prison sentences after the coup of July 15, 2016 in Turkey. Please welcome Hilal Akdeniz.
Thank you so much, Sophia, and thank you for the possibility to present on this platform. Women are arrested every day in Turkey. Women who are accused of helping others. Women who are visited by the police in the hospital while they give birth to their child, only to be taken to prison immediately afterwards. Women who have conscientiously pursued their professions as journalists, judges, teachers, civil servants, and have tried to be helpful to other people. There are actually around 246,000 people in prison in Turkey. About 4% of them are women. These are about 12,000 women. This number is immense and hence has increased several times compared to previous years. As a sociologist, I didn't want and I couldn't watch it all. Last year, I made a call on Twitter to at least scientifically document human rights violations and torture and othering in society. For my PhD, I conducted around 40 biographical narrative interviews with people who were in custody after the attempted coup of summer 2016, or who had to serve prison terms on charges of terrorism. A surprising number of interviews contacted me from Turkey. They could not stand the shutdown of the media and the legal system and wanted me to document their stories and their suffering. I would like to thank all of my interview partners for the trust they have shown. In the following lecture, I would like to present the conditions of women and children in the pre-trial detention and prison, the forms of violence and torture in prison, the social sanctions and discrimination of those affected, and a brief summary of my results so far. After the attempted coup in July 2016, Turkey followed a state of emergency that lasted several months. Just a few days later, a course that is far from a rule of law and democracy. During this time, the pre-trial detention was extended up to 30 days. That means to be interrogated, harassed, beaten, and tortured for 30 days in midsummer without being able to establish contact with the law and family. This also means having to stay in a 15 square meter cell with sometimes 40 people, in which there are no windows, beds, or other objects, only getting a little bottle of water twice a day, not getting enough food, or being unable to shower or allowed to use the toilet. Under these circumstances, 30 days are an eternity. My interviewees said that they were threatened with rape and violence every day. They were badly abused and harassed. During the initial admission, all persons are examined naked. My partners reported sexual fights and verbal attacks and harassment during these investigations. The AKP government often brags in debates about the hijab and likes to be the protector of the headscarf. All of my interviews had to take off their hijab. sometimes with tears, although the premises were also accessible to men. Some women had little babies who were breastfeeding and who they left with family members when they were arrested because they thought they would come home in a few hours. Some of these women were not allowed to bring their children to breastfeed, and they had to hand pump their milk into the sinks of the police stations. They received no medical care when they developed a high fever and breast infections. The women who had their children with them also received no support or child-friendly food for these children. Unfortunately, this unsuitable situation for children continues in the actual prison. The children of women in prison are mostly under 6 years of age. They have no special rights, for example, with regards to food, leisure activities, or toys. Toys are prohibited in the cells. To relieve their mothers of the children, some women made cars out of plastic bottles and bags in their cells, made figures of dough, or made color out of food and painted with them. All crafted objects are collected during the prison guards' rounds. Flowers that they had planted were removed. Any form of beautification in the cell was confiscated by prison staff. Many mothers have told me that they were completely overwhelmed with their own situation and often had depressive days and were therefore unable to respond to their child. In this situation, other imprisoned women are said to have shown their solidarity and supported these women by looking after their children for a few hours. In order to reproduce some passages from the interviews, I would like to present 2 excerpts here. A young mother told me that the first night in prison with her young son was the longest of her life. The guards did not give her the things she took for the child. They said that they had to control everything first. She was sent to prison that morning. In the evening, when she asked for it, they still hadn't checked. When she said that the baby's pacifier and baby bottle were in it and that he would ask for them and cry when he fell asleep, the guard yelled at her and said she had enough time to think about it. The child cried for several hours and the young mother with the child. She said that night she lost faith in people. Another mother with a 4-year-old son tried to get her child gently through the time of prison. She explained to him that she had to work there and they could go home as soon as her work was done. Every day he asked why she had to work so long and when they could finally go home. When they were released and were at home, he kept asking her if they had enough money. This surprised her and she asked why his question was. He replied that he was afraid that they would have to go back to work. This already difficult situation in Turkish prison has increased several times over with COVID-19. Medical care is negligently neglected. External contact is almost completely paralyzed, with the exception of a few telephone calls that women can make with their families. The public in Turkey and around the world are not informed about these biographical tragedies. One could now think that these people in Turkey will experience a little calm and normalcy, at least after their layoffs. Unfortunately, this is not the case. All people brought under suspicion of terrorism are systematically tagged via the state archive. This means that if you want to open an account with a bank, or require any other information, the digital system will show you your criminal record. That is, as soon as they come into contact with this allegation, they are branded. So you cannot live in Turkey an independent, free, and self-determined life in public. The bad, you can't leave Turkey either. because you are banned from going abroad by Turkish officials. Because they cannot apply for a passport with their requirements and are almost always banned from abroad. Unfortunately, the social environment reacts no less differently than the state or public environment. People do not hesitate using hate speech or othering these people. Many are afraid of coming into contact with the accused and fear similar punishment, especially since helpers and supporters of such families, for example, people who have provided humanitarian aid in form of visits or donating food, are punished publicly and in the media. Many interviews shared about the emotional hurt and despair they experienced due to the discrimination of their families or friends. For these predominantly highly qualified women who for various reasons can't leave Turkey, there's often no other choice except to work on job market as low-wage workers, as cleaning help or in the catering trade. They are often shamefully exploited by the employers as illegal workers without any protection. Women who are accused of being terrorists or whose husbands are in jail are exposed to immense danger. They are at the mercy of both financial and sexual exploitation. So it is not surprising that some interviews spoke of a social genocide when they described their situation. In order not to overstrain my little limited time, I would like to summarize 5 of my interim results of my PhD as follows. Hardly any interview partner can imagine a future in Turkey. Only 3 interviews from my sample wanted to continue to living in Turkey. None of them were, none of the women wanted that. Their belief in the rule of law and legal justice has been completely destroyed. When the police called, many of the women went to the police station for interrogation, believing that they could go home after a few hours or that there must be a mistake. None of them had ever experienced police violence or prison before. Some of them have suffered psychological and physical damage from abuse and torture in prison that will affect them for life. All my interview partners had experienced othering, either from friends or family. This caused deep emotional hurt in most of them. Despite these serious biographical cuts, none of the interviews made a statement about violence, revenge, or retribution. Their protest attitude is exclusively non-violent. Very many expressed personal self-criticism about their lack of solidarity with minorities or their lack of understanding of democracy or before their imprisonment. This reflection motivated them to contribute to these values in the future. I would like to end my presentation with a quote of Hannah Arendt. Power and violence are opposites. Where the one rules absolutely, the other is absent. Violent appears where power is a jeopardy, but left to its own course, it ends in power's disappearance. Lots of thanks again to all of my interview partners who entrusted me with their biographies. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. That was wonderful. You ended even a few minutes early, which is nice. Let's now move back to Vanya Womack, who I've read her bio, so I'm just going to remind the audience that she's the executive director of the Refugees Unknown Stories Untold and a human rights activist. We now turn to you, Vanya. So be sure to unmute yourself.
There we go. Thank you very much. Hafsa, could you go ahead and put up the slides for me? And then I'll just let you know when to move those.
Can you see the screen? Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, I got it. All right, thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit here about the violations against the Hizmet women specifically, and I'll go into that a little bit. I was already introduced, so we can go on to the next slide. So before I go any further here, I want to make sure that I give some credit. You're going to see a lot of artwork, like this artwork that you see in front of you. And the two women that did this artwork are both in exile from Turkey. And so a lot of the things that you're going to see are really explained very well. And they've done a really good job of being able to show the suppression of families and women and children. So these are their Instagram accounts. And I want to note too, that you'll see kind of along through the presentation how well the slides fit. However, they did not make these pictures for this presentation specifically. So thank you again for letting me use your artwork. Next slide. So human rights and marginalized groups. So human rights against women and children, unfortunately, is not something that's new or unique to Turkey. Here is a picture here. Oh, that's right. Picture here. I just wanted to show you at the bottom. You know, it's saying my mother is a teacher and she gets no amnesty, but you know, the murderer and the drug dealers, you know, they get let off. Next slide. So in recognizing that oppression of women has been happening since the inception of the nation across both the political and the social spectrums, especially to Kurds and other marginalized groups like the ones that you see here on the slide, my specific experience has been in Germany and in Greece, and it's been predominantly with women and children and families from the Hizmet movement, where they identify themselves in one way or another with Hizmet. So I wanted to make sure that I told you that moving forward. So the past 2 days for us, we've really, you know, we've talked about all kinds of things, and I know that sometimes, you know, we're repeating some of the things, but I think that that's really, really important. So one of the things that I do think is missing and that we tend to miss quite a bit is what these stories are, because these stories are what keep, you know, keep everything alive so that people are paying attention. So I'm going to try to go into that more as we move forward. Next slide. So with all those presentations, you know, we did hear some stories. We also heard a lot of data. And while I think that, you know, data is important, we absolutely have to have it. When we don't have the stories to go along with it or the picture to go along with it, what we end up doing is kind of falling into this trap of not being able to empathize, right? To be able to feel, you know, and understand the feelings of others or the emotions of others. And what we end up doing is we end up relying on more sympathy and compassion. And I can tell you that, you know, before I went to Greece and to Germany, you know, I had sympathy, I had compassion, but it wasn't until I heard these horrific stories that I was able to develop that empathy for these women and children and families of the Hizmet movement. Next slide. So I met with many women and there was a common thread that went through really all of the stories that they told me. And you know, they were things like emotional abuse at their jobs, losing their jobs. And, you know, one thing comes to mind right now is that I had one woman tell me, she said she went into work one morning and she was told to go into a conference room. And so she walks into this conference room and she's told to sit in a chair, which is in the middle of a circle of all of her colleagues. She sat in this chair while they continued to emotionally abuse her, calling her a terrorist, obviously calling her all kinds of things. And it was, you know, that day that she ended up losing her job. So the other thing that happens is many people have, you know, lifelong friends. I heard stories of people, you know, being friends since, you know, grade school and them turning against them, or even family members disowning them. So those are all, you know, all experiences of people that I talked to. Another one is that I met a group of young girls, and there were several of them that ended up walking across the Balkans. And we're talking about 18 years old, 20, 22 years old. And during that walk, having to endure sexual assault, having to endure hunger, infections in regards, from losing their shoes, that kind of thing. So, that all falls under here about the abuse of women. Next slide. Here, I just want to draw a note to this picture here, is that, besides the loss of income, besides losing their homes, besides not having any money, the hunger, the fear, they're also losing their children. They're losing their spouses. They're losing brothers and sisters from drowning during the escape, right? And so that is something that, that I know was a common fear of these women as they were getting ready to leave. Next slide. Okay, so I want to touch here on prisons. You've heard a little bit about this before, but the prisons are overcrowded. The EU Commission's report, actually, and this is a 2018 number here, indicated that they were operating at over 136% of capacity. And that actually some prisons were running at double capacity. Women told me about, these overcrowding prisons, these deteriorating conditions. And, with COVID and having to quarantine people, that even stretches the capacities to over, for example, 45 people in a 7-person cell. So actually, Haspa, can you go back to the other one? I want to mention, I just learned this. There's actually a story behind this picture. And for those of you that, that don't know, this is something that happened here within the last couple months. There were a team of police officers, which, as you can see from the picture, look like like a SWAT team. And you can see the decorative door kind of in the back. Well, the SWAT team went to go arrest a young woman, and she was at home with her children. And they had her, get down on the ground. They went ahead and arrested her. And this has been like perpetrating through the media. They have their guns drawn, and do you know why they did this? This is, I hear some of this stuff and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. But they did this because she was collecting money and providing books and different things like that and food to people that were in prison. And so they wanted to make an example out of this. And what it is, it's a way to kind of portray people as hard criminals. And it's a way to dehumanize and gather, acceptance of being able to use tactics like this. Next slide. So torture of women in prison. I heard a lot about sexual torture in a number of different ways, but I also heard things about torture that were things like this: losing a baby in a prison cell that was crowded with men, young women who were sexually assaulted, violently raped, sometimes together and often alone. And in one instance, I was told that there was a young couple that had just been married, and they were tortured, beat, and raped in rooms right next to each other. So while I could continue going on and talking to you about many of these violent stories that have to do with soldiers or with police, I'm going to tell you the story of one woman that I met. And I think her story, although it includes some of those things, is really going to give you a broader picture of what women have to endure when they're in prison. Next slide. So I'm going to tell you a story here about Fatma, and in order to keep her privacy, that is what I'm calling her. So Fatma had just made a long drive with her uncle to see her father, who was in prison, and it was a long 12-hour drive to him since he had moved from the prison that was in their town. Her father, who was a retired, well-known academic, was already sentenced to 8 years for subscribing to the newspaper Zaman, which Erdogan, we know, had labeled as a terrorist paper. Well, the government had acquired the mailing lists or the subscription list, and her father's name was on it. So they came to his house and they had arrested him. All he had done was had a paper delivered to his home. And by the way, I believe that Zaman is the largest circulating, at least English paper in Turkey. So here's Fatma, she's sitting there, she's waiting to try to see her father. She's in a darkened room and she's arrested. She was 7 months pregnant. Her 80-year-old mother was watching her 4-year-old daughter. So here she is, she's taken into custody. She's not able to see her father. She's stripped naked and she's searched with guards groping her pregnant body. They told her they weren't going to rape her because she was pregnant. Now they put her in a cell with mostly men, and she became even more, distraught when they wouldn't let her leave to go to the bathroom. So she had to urinate in front of all of them in the cell, and she estimated that to be about 25 people. This cell was so small that there wasn't enough room for everyone to be able to sit, like up against the wall. But one of the men moved so she could rest against it. She was trembling, she was terrified. She had no way to contact her uncle who was outside waiting for her. She had no way to contact her mother who was, with her daughter. And even more so now, she's fearful for the baby that she's carrying. And she kind of looks around and she sees in the corner an elderly woman that's sitting on a plastic chair. And she looks at her and she looks really dehydrated and very unwell. So she yelled to the guards that the woman was in need of medical help. And all she heard was silence. So she was sitting there and she started to kind of consume all of the smells around her. Smells of mold, smells of ammonia, something like cat urine, wet cement, stale dirt, and making her just nauseous to the point of vomiting, and not to mention the smell of human urine and feces. So she soon realized that the woman that is sitting in the plastic chair beside her had defecated herself, and urine was running down her legs and puddling down at the floor beside her. She tried to get the guards' attention, and this time they brought her a plastic chair with a hole in it and a bucket, and they told her to have the old lady sit on the chair. So as she goes to help the elderly lady to the chair, she realizes that she can't stand and she can't walk. And then she's told by others in the cell that she had arrived in a wheelchair. The guards didn't clean up any of the mess that day, so those that were in the cell had no choice but to eat and to sleep with all of those horrible smells around them and with the human defecation. She noticed that the elderly woman was continuing to defecate in the bucket, and she had looked extremely unwell. Fatma asked the guards to get the woman some medical attention, and again, they initially refused. You see, Fatma is a doctor. She had been working in a hospital for about 5 years. She knew that this was crying for an infection. And she says, not just an infection of bacterial infections, but an infection of the mind. And not for just those who were in prison, but for those who were putting them there. So the guards finally took the elderly woman to the hospital then, where Fatma believed that she died. Fatma spent the next 2 weeks in that same cell, eating little food, not being sure if the water that she was given was safe for her to drink with the baby. And she knew that she was in a situation where she was putting that baby in grave danger. She was finally released, and she was released to have her court date scheduled. And that was going to tell her exactly how many years she was going to be sentenced to. Well, Fatma did not go to her hearing to see how many years she was going to be sentenced. She knew all too well the stories of others who had attempted, to get a lawyer and were unsuccessful in advocating for their innocence. Her husband was a lawyer who was also feeling the pressure of arrest because he had made some kind of a comment about the mistreatment of detainees to a colleague who he suspects turned him in as a Hizmet sympathizer. So since he had lost his job, he was on the run. You know, he was hiding for over 6 months, moving house to house, trying to stay with people he knew or with relatives when he could, renting rundown apartments, just one after another. When they're finally able to come together, they decide, and they make a really hard decision. They decide to leave. So they're going to leave their ailing parents behind. They're going to leave the family and friends that have not turned against them. And they're going to leave all of their possessions and everything they've known. So they each packed a backpack with some belongings and some things to entertain their 4-year-old daughter, since they knew of the journey that they were getting ready to take. They paid a smuggler the little money that they had, and they risked their lives to cross the Aegean Sea in search of freedom. Fatma delivered a baby girl in Greece and maintains hope of getting to Europe to be able to practice medicine again, where she can help others. And her husband hopes to re-enter a law career, helping those who suffer. So, what I want to mention here is one of the tactics that they will use against Hizmet supporters is to put loved ones as far away as they can, when they go to prison. So that's so that you don't have to visit them. I heard stories of, people that were not able to visit their fathers because they had put them way up in the mountains where they would have had, the snow would have made it literally impossible for them to go, and where they completely moved people across the country. The other thing is that, I've talked a little bit about rape and torture, and that is, those are things that happen not to just women, but to men as well, using batons, using other kinds of bottles, using all different kinds of things. And this is justified by the perpetrators because they're calling them traitors, right? They're doing it for a cause. Again, it's a way to dehumanize. But I do want to make a note here that, not all women that are taken into detention or into prison are raped or sexually assaulted, although there are many. The bigger point here that I want to make is that it's just being arrested and taken to prison in the first place without any kind of a reason is really the larger human rights issue here. Next slide.
And I'd like to tell you, you only have 1 minute left.
Oh no, okay. So let me just, we've gone through kind of the data. The two main points are 17,000 women and over 800 children that are in prison. You can go to the next one. The Turkish government, I kind of wanted to spend a little bit of time here, but just basically what I have written down there, and you can see from this picture that it really depicts things so well. And many of these judges also, remember, are in prison. So, they're not condemning human rights violations against women and children in prisons. The other thing that they're doing is they're releasing murderers, right? They're releasing drug lords. They released ISIS members who they only keep from like 24 to 48 hours, I was told. And instead, they are keeping in, preschool teachers and, grade school teachers and professors, doctors, lawyers, etc. So, I think it's fair to say that Turkey is encouraging human rights. They're not trying to do away with them. Next slide. I talked in a little bit in the beginning about systemic torture, and I'll see if I can end with this. But when we talk about this, it's not just torture for the women of losing things, losing their job, et cetera. It's the soldiers and the police that come to their house. It's the government prosecutors, the pro-government prosecutors, the medical examiners that see them and say, no, nothing's wrong with you, and no, you didn't have any torture. It's the communities that they're in where they don't let their kids play with other kids. It's harassment at their employment, and then it's losing children to the loved ones as they escape from Turkey. Next slide. So here's what we can do. I have 50 more seconds. Here's what we can do, right? We can be a voice for the voiceless. We can lobby Congress. We can involve the EU and the UN and other human rights organizations consistently. We can create awareness, around the world as we tell these stories. And, the other thing that we can do is we can remember that we need to teach tolerance and we need to teach the value of human dignity. And I think the next slide is the last one. Yeah, so I want to again thank the artists that did incredible work, and I picked these pictures off their Instagram sites. But I also want to dedicate this to Guslam and Mustafa, who is a family that I met that was able to get to Germany, then from Greece. And this the Kara family had lost their 2 children as they were escaping Turkey to Greece. And I always end that they lost their children in search of freedom. So,
All right, thank you very much, Vanya. That was really, really powerful. Thanks. We now turn to Natalie Avazian, and she describes herself as a believer, an Armenian Christian who made her way in the way of Jesus and with his teachings. She's a human rights champion and an activist, dedicating her life to fighting for the rights of women and children in particular. Avazian runs to both financial and moral support of all victims of rights violations without looking at their identity. You have 15 minutes, Natalie.
Natalie Hanım. Natalie Hanım sesiniz kesik. Mikrofon kapalı. Söz sizde şu an.
Natalie, you have to unmute yourself.
Mikrofonun orada açılması gerekiyor. Şu an o kulaklıkla alakalı değil. Bilgisayar veya telefona bağlısınız ya, onunla alakalı. Ekranda o mikrofon tamam, şimdi açıldı. Şimdi açıldı.
Okay. Merhaba.
Hello everyone.
Ben coğrafyamızda kadının yerini ve hukukun katledildiğini anlatmayacağım bir hukukçu olarak Eren Hanım bunu çok güzel ifade etti.
So I'm not going to talk about the laws in my geography has been butchered because Miss Eren had talked about it very distinctively.
Bu son 5 yılda bir soykırıma uğramış bir halkın torunu olarak son 5 yılda yaşananları, kadınlara, çocuklara yapılanları çok çok yakından bileyim. Bilen biri olarak.
So I want to talk about it as a person who had witnessed, I might say, genocide towards women and children of this country, as who has witnessed this and actually been close to these.
Ben sözüme kutsal kitapla başlamak istiyorum. Kutsal kitapta kadını yaratılışını anlatırken Adem'in kaburgasından yaratıldığını, ayak kemiğinden de değil, başından da değil, kaburgasından. Çünkü can evidir kaburgası. Anlatılır. Ayrıca Hz. Muhammed Peygamber'de anneler, cennet annelerin ayağının altında der. Ama ne yazık ki bizim coğrafyada bir sabah kalkıyorsunuz, teröristsiniz. Uyanıyorsunuz başka bir gün, terörist propagandası yapıldı diyerek gözaltına alınıyorsunuz.
So I want to start talking about the Holy Books. In the Holy Books, it says that the woman has been created from the rib bone of Jesus, of Abraham. Now, it doesn't say the skull, it doesn't say the leg, it does say rib bone. Why it says rib bone? Because rib is the one keeps safe of our life. And also Prophet Muhammad said that the heavens are laid underneath the feet of the mothers. So this is what the Holy Books talks about, how the Holy Books talks about the woman. But unfortunately, in this geography that we're living in, is totally on the opposite. The woman might wake up in one morning and they'll be accused of being a terrorist, and the other morning might wake up and being accused of making a propaganda of a terrorist organization and being detained eventually.
Tabii bu her kadın için geçerli değil. Solcu olmanız gerekiyor. Cemaate üye olduğu iddia edilen kadınlar da.
So it might not be true. This last thing I mentioned might not be true for all the women, but in generally, like if you're a leftist, if you're even alleged to be member of a Gulen organization, that is definitely true.
Bakın küçücük bir şey anlatacağım. Ben sadece hükümete yakın olan bir gazeteci için, Hilal Kaplan gazeteciye Hilal Kaplan'ın önerisi dedim. Sadece sosyal medyada. Bununla ilgili Adana'da ben Ahmet Burhan Atacı ziyarete gitmiştim. Adana'da annemin evi basıldı. Ben 18 tane polis sayabildim. Düşünün sadece Hilal Kaplan'ın önerisi yazdığım için. Çünkü bu hükümete yakın bir kadındı.
You know, I just in the social media, I wrote this. Just a small example. I wrote something and I said, this is a suggestion coming from journalist Hilal Kaplan, who happens to be close to the government. Just for that, you know, I went to the province of Adana and my house had been raided by as far as I was able to count, by 18 police officers.
Gözaltına alınıyorsunuz. Çok aşağılayıcı bir şekilde sizi çırılçıplak soyuyorlar. İğrenç bir şekilde muayene ediliyorsunuz. Otur kalk, otur kalk, otur kalk. 3 kez size tekrarlatıyorlar. Ben küçücük bir şeyden ya sadece Hilal Kaplan o kelimeyi söylediğim için bu aşağılayıcı muameleye maruz kaldım ve cemaat kadınlara yapılanlar artık düşünebilirim. Yani ben size bırakıyorum.
So it is not accustomed. It is not accustomed in that for women who have been detained, which have been detained, just given the name or suggesting the journalist who's close to the government, you know, they try to humiliate by stripping us naked, completely naked, and making those like squats and everything, just to humiliate us, which is not being a norm in Turkey. So this is done to me, and I cannot imagine what they're doing to the women who are actually members of a Gulen organization.
Ne yazık ki son yıllarda on binlerce kadın aynı muameleye maruz kaldı. Bugün 780 bebek anneleriyle birlikte hapishanede yatıyor.
So unfortunately, there has been tens of thousands of people had been treated same or worse. And they even, as far as we know, there has been at least 780 babies, infant babies, in prisons with their mothers.
Ya benim aklım almıyor. Avrupa Birliği, Birleşmiş Milletler nasıl bu kadar sessiz kalabiliyor? Aklım almıyor. Bugün anneler, bizim coğrafyamızda anneler çocuklarını elleriyle mezara gömüyorlar.
You know what I cannot comprehend, what I don't get it, is European Union, United States, why are they silent and not doing anything about it or not even talking about it when mothers over here burying their infants, their children?
Ne yazık ki cemaat kadınları çok yalnız bırakıldı ülkemizde. Korkuyorlar. Ben anlamıyorum. Aklım almıyor.
And unfortunately, the most of the women that had been isolated and left alone, especially the ones who are the followers of Gulen movement.
Bakın ben belki de bu programa katıldığım için yarın gözaltına alabilirim. Hiçbir kadın derneği cemaatteki kadınlara sahip çıkmadı. Ben solcu bir Hristiyan olarak ben her zaman yanlarında olmaya çalıştım. Bunun için işte
So as I'm talking here, there is something, there's a reality. Tomorrow they may come and arrest me and take me away. This might very well happen. And just because I am in support of members of a Gulen movement ladies, so for supporting for these ladies actually, and unfortunately none of the women organizations came in support of these women. as a leftist Christian, I'm trying to help them.
Son 5 yılda o kadar çok böyle her şey yarım kaldı ki, hayaller yarım kaldı. Çocuklar büyüyemedi. Anneler babalar çocuklarının yanında olamadı.
In the last 5 years, a lot of things left unfinished half. All the dreams are unfinished and left half. The parents couldn't be with their children, and children's dreams are stalled.
Bütün herkes biliyor Ahmet Burhan Atacı, biz Ahmet'le yaşadıklarımızı. Bütün çabalarımıza rağmen olmadı, yaşatamadık.
You know, everybody knows, our struggles with about Ahmet Burhan Atacı. We've done everything in our hands, but we couldn't let the person continue living, breathing.
Annesiyle birlikte Almanya'ya gidip tedavi olmasına izin verilmedi. O kadar çok böyle zaman geçti ki belki vaktinde Ahmet'in annesine izin verilseydi Ahmet'i yaşatabilirdik biz.
So if we have struggled so much, we put up so much fight so that we can send Ahmet Burhan Atacı to abroad with his mother. Maybe if they would allow us, which they didn't, maybe that child would be alive today.
Feridun Maden'in annesi babası daha özgür yaşamak için Yunanistan'a kaçarken biz Feridun'u kaybettik. Ve o sahile vurdu. Ben o günden beri hiçbir çocuğa mavi çorap alamıyorum.
When parents of Celine, while on their attempt to flee to Greece, drowned and died, and eventually hit the shore. The lifeless body hit the shore. The child had blue socks. Ever since that day, I cannot buy blue socks.
Bakın Ahmet'in şeyi vardı, böyle hayali vardı. Hayalleri bile, her şeyleri yarım kaldı. Ahmet vefat etmeden 1 ay önce annesine, anne ben iyileşecek miyim demiş. Annesi de tabii ki oğlum iyileşeceksin. Ondan sonra yaza kaç ay var deyince Zekiye Hanım 2 ay var demiş yaz olmasına. Peki anne bisikleti binebilecek miyim diye sorduğunda ama Ahmet bisikleti binemeden öldü.
The dreams left unfinished, half they have not been lived through. Ahmet, in his one conversation, was asking his mother, when do you think, you will be here? And the response was in a month. And then we'll ask, actually, am I going to get any better, Mom? Mom responded, yes, son, you'll get better for sure. And ask another question, how many months we have left to the summer? The response was, we have 2 months left. And then ask, Mom, would I be able to ride my bicycle by the summer?
Ağustos ayında en son Fatih Terzioğlu'nu kaybettik. Ben onunla çok yakından ilgilenmiştim. Fatih'in tek suçu Van depreminde bağış yapmak.
So, and also an attorney, spent a lot of time trying to help Fatih Terzioğlu. So I know this case very close. The only accusation, only guilt that he had was making a donation after the province Van earthquake.
Ben Esra bana çok özel bir şey anlattı. Çok genç bir kadın Esra. 2 tane küçücük çocuğu var. Esra Fatih'i ziyarete gittiğinde günlerden salı olduğunu söyledi. Düşünebiliyor musunuz? Aylardır hapiste yatıyor ve şey demişim Esra'ya. Esra demiş ben bugün bir dizi varmış, ismini hatırlayamadım. Ben demiş o diziyi izleyeceğim. Sen de demiş çocuklarla izler misin? Sanki hepimiz yine bir aradaymışız gibi. Evimizdeymişiz gibi izleyelim. Ama izleyemediler. Biz Fatih'i de kaybettik. Onlar tekrar bir araya gelip televizyon izleyemediler.
So after many months, Esra, I know Esra. Esra is a young lady, a young woman with 2 very young, almost infant children. Their father, Fatih, was imprisoned. So after months, it was on Tuesday, they finally was able to see each other. And Fatih said, actually, you know what, there's this TV series. I want to sit down and one day watch it together so that I can feel like we're a family. That's what the families does. And they never have gotten back together again. He died.
Selman vardı. Beyin kanserinden kaybettik Selman'ı. Ve Selman o kadar uzun süre babasıyla birlikte olmak istedi ki. Babasının suçu edebiyat öğretmeni. Babasının suçu bir dershanede çalışıyor olmaktı. Selman çok istedi babasıyla birlikte olmayı, zaman geçirmeyi. Babası için izin almayı başarabildim ama babası evlerine gittiğinde, jandarmalarla evlerine gittiğinde bilincini kaybetmişti Selman, babasını yapamadılar.
Selman was another one. This is the son of a father whose crime was be the literature teacher. Yes, he was teacher of literature. Worked in the university prep courses as a teacher. So Selman had a brain cancer. So I struggled so much and worked so much to get time so Selman can see his father. That's all he wanted. He wanted to see his father who was in prison. Finally, I was able to get the time, and they came to the house where Selman was with the gendarmerie. But at that time, it was already too late because of the brain cancer. Selman had already lost consciousness.
Natalie, you have 1 minute.
Bir dakikanız var Natalie Hanım. Buyurun.
Şimdi o kadar çok şeyim var ki lütfen Birleşmiş Milletler bir şey yapsın artık çocuklar için. Lütfen.
There is so many stories, and I want United Nations
Bakın,
to do what they're supposed to do for children.
Çok kötü bir iddia var. Hapishanelerde çocuklara yemek verilmediği ve annelere verilen yemeği çocuklarıyla birlikte paylaşmak zorunda kaldığı söyleniyor.
Unfortunately, there's also terrible things as far as going as they do not give food to children in the hospital. So mothers were forced the adult food to share with their children.
Ben artık böyle çocukların cenazesine gitmek istemiyorum.
I don't want to go
kutlamak istiyorum. Doğum günlerine gitmek istiyorum.
I do not want to go to children's funeral anymore. I want to go to their birthdays.
Okay. That was very emotional. I know that not only Natalie is crying, we're all crying, and I hear that the audience is also crying. Thank you very much, Natalie, for a very profound and touching talk. It's very hard to follow all of you. It's just, of course, very hard. Can you see my screen? Okay. I'm going to talk about human rights violations against women in Turkey, honor and shame. I'm Professor Sofia Pandya. I'm at California State University, Long Beach. This is an image of Merve Demirel. And as you can see, she was sexually assaulted by a policeman because she's the daughter of a Hizmet Gülen supporter. This is an image drawn by a child refugee, a little girl, obviously. And so she had to cross the Evros River. You see the river in between the heart, and you see the pain that she suffered, leaving school, leaving Turkey, knowing that family members have been jailed, reading the newspaper. And you also see that she doesn't have a mouth. She doesn't feel that she can talk. So during political conflict, women in particular suffer from displacement, poverty, and sexual abuse. They're also used as tools to create fear and dishonor in the targeted community. And that's what I'm going to talk about. In the aftermath of the July 15, 2016 coup attempt towards unifying Turkey under his rule and neutralizing those perceived as his opposition, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has taken advantage of pre-existing conditions to scapegoat Hizmet participants. I have HGM, that's Hizmet Gülen movement participants, also Kurds, Alevis, leftists, and others, thousands of whom have fled Turkey. He blamed them for the failed putsch, and he furthered their ostracism. Even casual participants have been fired, rejected, or reported by neighbors, friends, and family members, sometimes jailed and even tortured. And that's, that's not just movement publications, that's Amnesty International. You see another image here by a child held in a refugee camp with their family, looking out at the birds and the sun. Like Vanya, I'd like to thank those children who will remain anonymous, but who drew me many pictures of their experience. So this has led to a myriad of human rights violations. According to the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, General Assembly Resolution 217A, all people have the right to life, property, liberty, security of person, freedom of speech, freedom from arbitrary arrest and torture, the right to work, the right to seek an education, to have freedom of movement, and more. But the Turkish government has violated all of that since 2016 and began to violate that before. What are the consequences for women? They are many, and it's hard to cover them in 15 minutes. But since then, women have been subjected to an uptick of a variety of intimidation strategies, including rape, the threat of rape, harassment, other forms of violence, not only by the AKP-led government, but also by civilians who have been recently emboldened by this climate in which macho hypermasculinity and misogyny have become widespread. Not long after the putsch attempt, feminists noticed an increase in attacks and harassment on the street against women. Journalist Pinar Ersoy writes that women have been silenced during the purge and that women's groups have been targeted. One way that Erdogan has silenced people is through threatening men's honor and also families' honor, women's honor. But if you think of Turkey as a Muslim patriarchal country, an effective fear-creating tactic is to threaten the community's sense of honor. In general, Turkish men are tasked with protecting their wives and children. Failing to do so is considered to be a dishonor. Many of the men that I interviewed wept when narrating their devastating inability to protect their wives during the purge. A recurring refrain was that they didn't mind if they were arrested. They didn't mind if they were tortured, if it just meant their wives and children would remain safe. I heard that over and over again. This is an image of Merve, and I want to start with a quote that she has, because she's not a victim of sexual assault. She's a survivor of sexual assault. She said, "We as women should never be ashamed of harassment. It's not us, but the perpetrators who should be humiliated." Very strong words by Merve. So on February 16th, 2019, a movement-affiliated university student, Merve Demirel, took part in a peaceful protest. She was sexually assaulted by a police officer. The Ankara police appeared to justify the assault by stating that her, quote, her father was a teacher who was dismissed from duty after the 2016 coup attempt, implying that her father was affiliated with the Hizmet movement and thus deserved the dishonor of his daughter's assault, unquote. It's the perpetrators that should be humiliated. I completely agree with Merve here. I captured some women's voices. I interviewed dozens of women. So Kader is a 32-year-old married Kurdish woman. She worked as a college counselor, and she spoke of the government in terms of their tactics of targeting women with arrest, mistreatment, and rape. And she said that they do this expressly for spreading fear. She said, "I think this is why they arrest pregnant women. Men can bear it, but women are more vulnerable. In jail, those children don't see men. And when they're released, they're scared of men. Sometimes when the mothers and children are released from jail, the children are afraid of their own fathers, she later added. Her friend Zeynep added, this hurts the entire family. It makes the whole family and society scared. They arrested pregnant women with babies or small children. All of those children will never forget this situation. It doesn't matter how old they are. They lost their own freedom. They never got to see the sky, the stars, or even to play in a playground. There are kids in jail that have never been outside. They don't know what it looks like. So I want to talk about political displacement as well and women refugees. But because of this political turmoil, many women have fled Turkey. Women and children, especially girls, are the most vulnerable amongst the displaced. In fact, many people don't know this, but women and children die more than men of political turmoil. So, but during displacement, being a refugee or an asylum seeker, women and girls fall victim to rape and other forms of gender-based violence. And it's a strategy, it's on purpose, this is all on purpose. It's a strategy of political conflict and also part of the danger during the journey to the host country. Displaced women also suffer disproportionately from family separation, language barriers, a lack of access to resources, and mental health issues. And this woman here, after crossing the Evros River, she had a heart attack from the stress and died, leaving her 3 children behind. This is another image by a child. And you can see, you can interpret this as you interpret it, but you see the 2 girls crying. You also see an image of a Turkish flag, but the Turkish flag is kind of in turmoil as it's inside of a river as they're crossing the river into Greece.
Sophia, I think the slide just hasn't changed.
You don't see the flag?
Marve's, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's okay. You don't see this here?
No, just Marve. We're just seeing Marve.
Right, okay.
I just wanted to let you know that maybe you want to show something.
Okay, I want to stop share and share again. Thank you. So let me go down to where I want to share the picture so that you can see what I'm seeing. Do you see that now? Oops, one moment. Can you see this image here? Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah. I'll leave that there for you to take a look at for a moment. So women that are detained or jailed are vulnerable to strip searches, rape, and other demeaning treatment. That's Amnesty International. There's around 17,000 women currently jailed in Turkey. And a summary of the 2017 UN OHCHR report on Turkey states, and I quote, Turkish authorities reportedly detained some 100 women who were pregnant or had just given birth, mostly on the grounds that they were associates of their husbands who are suspected of being connected to terrorist organizations. Some were detained with their children and others were violently separated from them. And this is an image of Ayşe Şeyma Taş. She was detained 25 days after giving birth to her baby. I'd like to talk for a moment about mother's pain. There's over 700 babies and children held in jail with their imprisoned mothers in inadequate conditions. All of this violates the human right to be free from arbitrary arrest, unfair treatment, unfair trials and detentions, torture, and cruel, here I quote, cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment. Article 25 in particular notes that, quote, motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance. That's from the United Nations. Obviously, this has not been granted. So you see the images, women imprisonment increases 470% in Turkey since 2005. And the other image is from a video of imprisoned toddlers in Turkey. I want to talk for a moment about women's strength because scholars have written about the particular resilience of women victimized by political conflict and their coping mechanisms. And these include, quote, external processes, unquote, such as accessing resources, and quote, internal, a little typo there. Oh no, and not a typo, and quote, internal processes, such as reframing negative experiences, visualizing oneself in God's hands, and praying more. Prayer is powerful, but while those interviewed tend to tell me that prayer will heal them, it's unlikely that they're going to escape these wounds without some earthly help as well, such as access to adequate basic resources, food, shelter, and including mental health treatment. Judith Herman argues that healing for the victims of collective violence begins when the violence against them is halted, when their needs are provided for, and the perpetrators and bystanders of the atrocities have been brought to justice. She also advocates that victims give testimony regarding their experiences and find a survivor mission, which can be shared by the traumatized group. Obviously, until Erdogan ceases his purge of the movement and removes the terrorist label that he affixed to innocent people, those with family members still in Turkey cannot safely speak out. And that's why those with privilege must speak for them. And I'd like to thank you. And we now turn to Q&A. I believe that Hafsa Girdap will moderate that part.
Wayne, would you mind stop, yeah. That.
Mm-hmm.
So actually your last session, your last slide was just about what I wanna, ask the audience, coping mechanisms and the solidarity issues. And I would like to begin with Natalie, and we call each other Hokim. It's an Armenian word. And Murat Bey, if you could, or I can do that. Natalie, I'm gonna ask it in Turkish. Maybe she can have the time think on it, and then I'll translate to English. Çok insanın acısıyla, yani sabah ona uyanıyorsunuz. Hatta biz sizle bazen telefonlaşıyoruz, aramızdaki saat farkına rağmen geceleri bile sizin ayakta olduğunuzu görüyorum. Zaten şu anda çok net yansıtıyorsunuz. Bütün bunlar çocuk ve kadınların özellikle en kırılgan kesimin bu zulmün mağduru olarak yanındasınız hep. Bu sizin omuzlarınızda kesinlikle yük oluyor. Zaten rahatsızlıklarınızın olduğunu
ben yük olarak düşünmüyorum.
En azından
keşke çok daha fazla yardımcı olabilsem. Düşünüyorum, ne yapabilirim artık? Evet, sadece sesleri olabiliyorum.
Zaten
ulaşmaya çalışıyorum.
Siz kendinizi bu anlamda, kendinizi güçlendirmek için bu en hassas dönemlerinizde böyle dibe vurduğunuzda tabiri caizse nasıl güçlendiriyorsunuz, nasıl ayağa kalkıyorsunuz?
Bakın şey oldu, benim 7 yaşında...
Düşünün, ben soruyu İngilizceye çevireyim. So I ask her that she's dealing with really vulnerable people, including children and women, and she's also vulnerable in terms of her health issues. She has severe health issues, and she's always called from the police to for her statements, and I know that. So I just ask her, what's your coping mechanism?
Benim yeğenim şu an 11 yaşında, 7 yaşında ilkokul 1. sınıfa giderken Çanakkale Savaşı'nı öğretmeni anlatırken yeğenime geliyor ve şey diyor, ben Ermenileri sevmiyorum diyor. Çevirecek misin, devam edeyim mi ben?
Ben şimdi Murat Bey'e soruyorum çünkü o...
Tamam.
Murat Bey buradaysanız, çevirmede siz yardımcı olursanız ben hani birebir de profesyonel olmadan bir eksik şey yapmak istemiyorum. Murat Bey burada mısınız? Sophie, can you see? Yeah, I see that he's here. Okay, it's okay.
Yeah, he's here, but he's not unmuted. Murat, can you unmute yourself? You might have to translate Hafsa.
Okay. O zaman son cümlenizi tekrar edebilir misiniz? Ermenileri sevmiyorum diyor.
Öğretmeni işte Çanakkale Savaşı'nı anlatırken yeğenimin yanına, bakın öğretmen 45 yaşında, yeğenim 7 yaşında. Eğilip ve diyor ki ben Ermenileri sevmiyorum diyor. Daha sonra ben Adana'ya gittim. Pazar günü kiliseye gidiyoruz. Yeğenim dedi ki ben dedi bugün dedi çok dedi dua edeceğim. Bir de dedi rahipten dedi dua isteyeceğim. Neden dedim ben, neden dua isteyeceksin dedim. Öğretmenim beni sevsin diye dedi. Ama dedim ben dedim telefonlaşıyorum. Öğretmenin seni çok seviyor dedim. Hayır dedi beni sevmiyor dedi. Neden dedim. Bana dedi ki dedi ben Ermenileri sevmiyorum. Peki sen ne dedin öğretmenine dedim. Ben Ermeni değilim abim Ermeni demiş.
She's talking about her niece or nephew, and when she was in the primary school, she heard that once her teacher just talked about Armenian people, saying that she doesn't love them, and then Natalie heard her niece or nephew praying that for that vulnerable moment, and then Natalie asked her, what did you respond when you heard that? And she said that I told that I'm not an Armenian.
Daha sonra ben iş için Mersin'e gitmiştim. Böyle 75-80 yaşlarında bir böyle teyze koşarak yanıma geldi. Dedi ki ben dedi sizinle dedi yalnız konuşabilir miyim dedi. Ben de tabii dedim. Beni evlerine aldılar ve şey dedi böyle. Bize yardımcı olur musun dediler. Tabii ki ben yapmam gereken ne varsa yaparım dedim. Benim dedi kızım ve damadım Kütahya'da görev yapıyorlardı. 15 Temmuz'dan sonra oluyor bu. Görev yapıyorlardı. İşlerine son verildi. Dedim birçok kişinin işine son verildi. Yalnız dedi torunum dedi 8 yaşındaydı sanırım o zaman. Torunum dedi her sabah öğretmeni tahtaya kaldırıyor ve diyor ki bunun annesi babası FETÖ'cü. Bunun yüzüne tükürün. Yılanın başını küçükken ezmemiz gerekiyor. Ben çıldırdım. Nasıl olabilir bir öğretmen bunu yapabilir?
Devam edeyim.
Hemen sonrasıydı.
Ben çünkü Murat Bey gibi I'm not a professional translator interpreter, so I'm gonna try, so just bear with me. So she was talking about a lady, an old lady whose children were just dismissed from their jobs, and she was talking about her grandchild who was again attending a primary school or a secondary school, and the teacher was just saying that, degrading that kid, a little kid, saying to the rest of the class that just go and spit on that kid because her parents are just, terrorists, they are FETÖ terrorists. And she's, just saying that, and she said that you have to get rid of that terrorists, that snakes, when they are, very little, very small.
Ben empati yaparak yaptım. Çünkü benim cemaat hakkında hiçbir bilgim yoktu. Yemin ederim size ta ki 15 Temmuz'dan sonraya kadar benim cemaat hakkında hiçbir bilgim yoktu. Ve daha sonra bana işte sen FETÖ'cüsün, sen FETÖ'cülerin sesi oluyorsun diye suçlamalarda bulundular ve benim asla ve asla zerre kadar bilgim yoktu cemaat hakkında. Ben sadece empati yaptım. Benim yeğenime ya düşünsenize 7 yaşındaki bir çocuğa ben Ermenileri sevmiyorum diyor öğretmen. Yeah. Ve ben empati yaparak yaklaştım.
I think that's a great point that she wants to emphasize, that she's drawing on her own niece's experience to understand the followers or the sympathizers of Glam movement, to understand what they are going through. So she says that before the July 15 quit, and I didn't meet anyone from this Glam movement. And then after that, when I stand with them, when I stand in solidarity with them, because they are being persecuted, so I'm being called as FETÖ member. I hate using this term, but she's referring to that. I have to translate that.
Dün cemaatle birlikte yol alanlar bugün herkese FETÖ'cü diyor.
And
FETÖ'cü diyor.
Those who were buddies just before the queer attempt with the followers of Glam movement, now they are big enemies. And she also touched on the empathy issue. She said that I am trying to use my power of empathy to understand what they are going through, so I'm doing my best to stand with them. Thank you. Sophie, that was my...
Ben nefes aldığım sürece kadınların ve çocukların yanında olacağım. Dini, dili, ırkı, ocu, bucu olması beni ilgilendirmiyor.
You're so cute. She says that as long as I breathe, I'm gonna stand in solidarity with everyone who is being victimized, who is being persecuted, regardless of their beliefs, ideologies, colors, etc. Yeah.
Ben çünkü Mesih'in öğrencisiyim.
Kimin?
Mesih İsa'nın öğrencisiyim.
So she says that I'm the student or follower of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Amen. I'm also, Sophie, if you don't mind, maybe you can also answer that. What is the biggest, you say that prayers are important. When you met lots of people in Greece, this coping mechanism, I think it's very important for women here.
Yeah, actually, in the movement, there's a paradigm for healing from this trauma. So Fethullah Gulen, who's the inspirational figure behind the Gulen movement or Hizmet movement, says that through hüzün, which is sorrow, you can transform your pain into hoşgörü, which is kind of like a collective feeling of empathy or pluralism, and this can make you feel that you're, you can also carry out service, which will, through your hoşgörü, through your collective pluralistic empathy, you carry out service, and this can actually end up healing you, making you feel better, especially if you do it together with other people that have suffered. So that's a theological way to heal yourself. But as I pointed out, I think that you also, the brain is an organ in your head, and heart is also an organ in your chest. And when your body hurts, you also need doctors. So I just want to make a call out for mental health treatment. There's a lot of people in the movement that need some mental health treatment, and there's a tremendous stigma about this in Turkey. And so I'd like to get over the stigma. I tell all my friends I have my own therapist.
Really?
Of course, I just tell everybody because I think we need to get rid of the stigma. If your brain and heart hurt, you might, of course, do your prayers, of course, but also if they really, if that's not helping enough and you just feel depressed, go and try to reach out and get some treatment, psychological treatment. People did also talk to me about feeling as though telling their story would help them. And there's a lot of scholarship on this, that telling your story helps. Vanya's pictures are a way of telling stories, and the children's pictures that I showed also are a way for children to process what they have gone through. But a lot of people can't tell their stories, right? That's why it's important for other people to tell stories for them. It's also important, like the pictures that Vanya collected and the children's pictures that I collected. I think that this is very powerful. It's called art therapy, right? Art therapy is very powerful, and you can do it anonymously. You can collect artwork from this time. You don't have to sign your name to it, and you can just there can be a showing of this artwork later. It's a form of historical documentation, and it can be very healing. There's different ways to heal yourself.
Yeah,
music, art, touch therapy. There's lots of ways.
Thank you for sharing. Vanya, Hilal also interviewed lots of vulnerable people who were exposed to torture, any kind of torture. This is tremendous. I don't know if you witnessed any kind of self-care or trauma therapy that these women were getting.
So that's kind of a good point, Hafsa, here, because when I was that's one of the things that I noticed when I was in Germany, and then I kind of did it backwards, because most people go to Greece, first, and then go to Germany. And I actually was in Germany first before going to Greece several times. And, I was able to see what that process kind of looks like for people in regards to trauma. And, there are a couple issues. When you look at communal trauma, it's very hard, or it's very difficult for women, let's just say, to get together, even, in Greece. There's fear of congregating. They're still in a mindset of having fear that somebody's following them, and so everything is very raw at that point in time. And then I noticed kind of when they, if they're able to get over into Germany, that the people that I talked to there, they had a little bit, they were relaxed more. They were in more of they had more ability to think that it's okay, if I do convene with other women together. And I think that that's really important, because, I just go back to sharing these stories. I can't tell you how many women, hundreds of women that I talked to, and they all said to me, most of them all said to me, "Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for hearing my story. we don't think people hear us. And you know what? They're right. You know, people don't know about this. And granted, we have so much, you know, going on in the world. We've got, there's all kinds of abuse happening everywhere. But it's a matter of saying, you know what, I see this, and now I'm a part of this. And so now I'm going to try to do something about it. And if we can get more people to do that, then there's more noise that can be created. And, you know, I kind of throw it all back to a famous proverb, a Dari proverb, that really means, you know, drop by drop a river is made. So the more people that can kind of make a drop, that can make a difference, that will dedicate to do something, make some kind of noise in regards to this, maybe we can start to get something to flow. And so, you know, in talking to the women that I did in Greece and Germany, I felt this, like this togetherness in a sense, even though they weren't together, to say, you know what, we want to be able to do something. We want to be able to use our voice. And again, they can't because of family members that they have, you know, abroad, or even safety for themselves. So it's up to people like us. And like you said, Sophia, you know, we're privileged. And so we have to be able to use that. So my call is to get people to start talking about this more.
Absolutely. These are really important remarks, Vanya, really, because, you know, knowing that these women back in Turkey and even sometimes Greece, because of, you know, family members back in Turkey, they are some, you know, concerned. So we have to be voice of them. And these telling stories is also very important. And as Advocates of Silence Turkey, we are recording the stories of women, you know, being very cautious about their confidentialities, their security issues, you know, using their names very secret, very confidential, but we're keeping their stories. It helps. It really helps. Hilal, do you want to say anything about that?
I made similar experiences with my interview partners, and I recognized that the safety they felt in Germany after they reached this social state with the opportunity to be free and to live in a democratic area is such a great gift that they have to breath really to get normal, to become normal. And I think Greece is still too not far enough from Turkey. Mm-hmm. If you look over the sea, you can still see this. And I think it's we have to underline that there was no war or something like this. There was no global attack or something like this, so that the whole Turkish people or the whole Turkey was in danger. This is only a specific group, and it came so fast. Today you are working in a school, and tomorrow after the coup attempt you are a terrorist, and you don't have the time to get in this role. And they lost everything. They lost their jobs, they lost their money, they lost their homes, they lost their friends, and they lost their, I don't know, their trust in humanity often. And I guess it's perhaps something Turkish not to speak about your problems in the public. So they have they need a bit time to tell their stories. And if they find the motivated listener, I think they give you their stories and are so overwhelmed and feel so free. I get so many messages that they weren't able to tell the story even to their moms. And this was such an intimate moment with the interview partner and me, who had the preview of a biographic fiction. Often I said, this can't be true, this must be a film or something like this, but this was unfortunately true.
Yeah. Sophie, I'm gonna leave the floor to you for the closing remarks. I'm having lots of messages from the audience, and I just want to say to Natalie, Asiye, Zekiye Hanım'a, Esra Hanım'a ve birçok kadına bizim selamımızı iletip yalnız olmadıklarını, dünyanın dört bir yanında her dinden, her renkten, her milletten insan var. Onlar için sadece dua etmiyorlar. Aynı zamanda
programdan sonra arayacağım.
Evet, aktif olarak onların hakları için uğraşıyorlar. Bizden selam. I just said that please, pass out our, great wishes and our action that we are taking for them. Just let them know that they are not alone.
Böyle, çocuklar bana diyor. Esra Hanım, işte Zekiye'nin kızı var, Fatma Betül, Büşra, ondan sonra Ertuğrul. Hala diyor bana Ertuğrul mu yapmış, video çekmiş. Ben hasta olduğumu yazmıştım. Natalie teyze diyor, sana diyor Allah şifa versin diyor. Böyle dua ediyor benim için. Bir sürü çocuğum oldu benim. Ben biyolojik olarak anne değilim. Ama benim üzerinde çocuğum var. Hepsini de çok seviyorum. Ve biliyorum ki bir gün onlar beni ziyaret edecekler.
She says that she's not a biological mother, but she has more than 1,000 kids. For example, she just mentioned Esra, whose husband just, passed away. And the little kid, the other kid, is just saying that I'm praying for you when you are ill, that you get a speed recovery. So she says that I have lots of kids that they're going to visit me in the future. Thank you. Sophie, it's all yours.
Yeah, that's lovely. That's lovely. And I see that in the chat session here, I have a question from Elif Aksoy that I will try to summarize. And it's not just a question, it's also a comment, and we can use this as we conclude here. So she writes, after spending almost an hour and a half regarding women's rights issues, I think one of the most important thing is to love and respect one another. I'm just paraphrasing a little bit, Elif, if that's okay. Because if we do love each other, we must be respectful of each other as well. When we try to understand each other, everything will become much easier and much better. So I think, it's just really important. It's really important to think about this. My question is, so this is Elif's question, right? My question is, how can we unite as women for a better world? Because only women can understand other women better. And I think it's really important that Natalie was included here, and Armenian women together talking about problems that, for example, Hizmet women have. I think it's, Hizmet Turkish women have, right? I think it's it's a sort of this reflects love and respect, right? Love and respect. And that's what Elif is talking about. And it also reflects women's solidarity. So I know, Elif says, I don't want to hear any violent stories regarding women and children. She doesn't want to hear any more violent stories regarding women and children. And I think, what Natalie said about we want to attend birthdays, we don't want to attend funerals. That's what I really heard from Natalie. That's the sentence that struck me the most. I want to attend birthdays. I really do, in person, not online. But I also think it's very important to think about women's solidarity. So would any of the women here like to say something about women's solidarity for other women?
I mean, I can say something. I agree. I think that's extremely important. And I also want to just say to you, Natalie, that you're Natalie the warrior. I mean, you are a real warrior for speaking out and talking in the area and in the situation that you're in. So I really, and I'm sure everybody does, everybody commends you for doing that.
She's just saying to you that, Natalie, you are sorry, my mind just went away. Natalie Hanım, Hokim diyor ki size, siz gerçek bir savaşçısınız diyor. Gerçek güçlü bir kadın, gerçek bir savaşçısınız.
Ben diyorum, ben Mesih İsa'nın öğrencisiyim. Onun bana yüreğime ektiği sevgi tohumu yeşeriyor. Onun sevgisi beni.
Ne kadar kuvvetli Natalie Hanım. Aslında az önce Sofya Hanım da işte orada bahsetmişti. İnanç da insanı çok güçlü kılan bir şey.
Kesinlikle.
So she's talking about her faith and she's saying that I'm that strong because I'm the student of Jesus Christ. And this is a very important, coping mechanism, I guess.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. We all thank, I mean, I'd like to thank all the speakers. You did a tremendous job, each one of you. It was great. I told one of my friends during the text that I can quit now. I've been replaced with new talent. Yeah, but of course, you know, all of us are really important. I mean, but I'm just impressed by all of your talent. I just really am very, very impressed. But I think one of the real stars here, other than Natalie with her ability to get everybody to cry, is Hafsa. I want to give you cheers. You know, let's clap for Hafsa. I mean, she just does. She's got 4 term papers due, by the way, 4 20-page papers due. So yeah, so she's in the middle of finals week over in her graduate program, and she did all of this. This is tremendous commitment and tremendous work. I'd like to thank the Freedom Convention 2020. I'd also like to thank all of my co-panelists. I'd like to really thank the audience for tuning in and listening. It's very important. You know, we don't want to be invisible anymore. We don't want the women in Turkey that are suffering human rights violations to be invisible. So please do carry out whatever you can do, given your level of privilege, to shed light on the voices of women, so that we can consider to change what's happening in Turkey, all these human rights violations. Let's work against this. Let's fight against this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sophie. I think your last, sentence could be the motto of whole freedom conventions. Don't be scared. Just fight. There is no need to, have fear. That's great. That's amazing. And I am very humble, very, very honored, very privileged to be among you ladies, such strong, empowered women. Thank you so much for participating in our organization's convention, and thank you for being a voice to voiceless. And thank you, the audience, to be here with us for 2 hours. Mattel Hanım, iyi geceler diliyoruz sizi. Çok öpüyoruz Hokim. It's 2 a.m. in the morning in Turkey right now, and you see her. She's all awake.
Hepsi Hokim. Hepsi Hokim oldular.
Hokim.
Arkadaşlar
I'm going to explain them later. Okay, thank you and bye-bye and stay safe.
Olmuş yapar mısın?
Just a moment. I'm going to stop.
Bye, hello.